Yeah, hey everyone, Brian with you from TheGameCommon, and we are finally doing our AI-only Civ 6 Championship Series. The time has finally arrived. We have been wanting to do this for quite a few months now. We're actually calling this one the Fall 2021, even though this is going to be a rather long series, and so it's probably going to get into 2021, but we've been wanting to do this for a while. Unfortunately, my fall turned out to be a little busier than normal. In addition to just the steady stream of new civs, I was like, well, let's wait for the next patch. Let's wait for the next patch, but I think we finally have the perfect time to do it. We have the perfect number of civs and leaders and stuff like that, and just like how it's going to work out with the group stages, I was like, this is perfect. Let's roll with this. Let's do this. So if you have never seen our AI only championship series before, I kind of got the idea from it watching the World Cup a couple summers ago. And so essentially what we're doing is we're taking all of these civs in the game, we're breaking them down into groups. Then every civ is trying to earn their way out of their group. If they earn their way out of their group, then they make it to the knockout rounds. Then after the knockout rounds, we end up with the final, and then eventually we crown a winner. Now, like I said, this is going to be a couple months long for sure. My goal is to kind of get this series done with before the next civ comes out, which is in January, but I don't know. I'm kind of worried that we're going to be able to do this quick enough because this tends to get a little long, especially with all the different group stages and stuff like that, but it's fine. It's fine because, you know, everyone enjoys it. So before we get in there, let's pop into my notes and I can kind of show you what we ended up doing here. So we have 54 total civs / leaders. We're using all the different variants of the leaders. So we have both Bull version of Teddy Roosevelt as well as the Rough Rider version. And then we have the Magnificent Catherine as well as the Black Catherine. It just worked out better to have them that way. Also, too, I didn't really want to do I was trying to figure out which one to use, and I was like, you know what, let's just put them all in. I kind of made sure that they weren't in the same groups, though, just to, you know, I don't know, maybe there's a part of me that was like, maybe they should be in the same group, but then I was like, I don't know, let's just kind of just let them all be unique, and I think that's fine. We're also using both versions of Eleanor, so that ends up giving us a total of 54 total civs, which then gives us 6 groups of 9, which is kind of perfect. So what will happen then here is we're going to end up making group 1, and group 1 is going to essentially have these 9 civs in it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to essentially let the AI take over. We're going to be playing the part of a spectator. We're basically going to be stepping back, trying to have as little impact on the game as possible. And we're going to let these 9 civs compete against each other. And then at the end of 315 turns, if someone hasn't won the game yet, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to look at the score, and the top 2, like let's say Ottoman and Eleanor are 1 and 2 in score. At that point, then they're going to advance onto the knockout rounds. So after we do that for all 6 groups, we're going to end up with 12 total civs, and then we'll have 42 civs left that didn't make it to the knockout rounds. What we do at that point is then we shake up all the groups, we randomize them again, and we're going to end up with 42 other civs, which is then going to give us 7 groups of 6, and we're going to do the exact same thing and take the top 2 from each one of those secondary groups, and then that's going to give us another 12 civs, which gives us 24 for the knockout rounds. So the reason we do the second knockout rounds or the second chance knockout rounds is essentially because, well, a couple reasons. Number one, let's say you're a huge fan of Harold. Let's say he ends up getting knocked out here in group 1 super early on. Well, then rest of the series is kind of like, eh. So part of it is like, hey, he's got another opportunity. Just because he gets knocked out right away doesn't mean he's dead. Number one. Number two, sometimes civs get stuck in a really, really strong group. There is one particular group here, I think it's group 5, that's going to be absolutely ridiculously difficult to make it out of. And so it's like, if a powerful civ doesn't actually make it out of that group, they'll have another opportunity to make it out with the second chance rounds. And then number 3, random starts are always a thing. Sometimes some civs get really, really, really horrible starts, and we've had games where we're like, you know what, we're actually going to restart this one because that civ has gotten such a horrific start. But then there's other times where like the civ just doesn't get a good start for whatever reason. Maybe they break, like the AI is just like, I don't know what to do here. Other times they literally just get completely screwed by their start. And so the second chance round essentially gives a little less variability to it all. Hopefully we can get a little bit more of a, you know, as even of a start as possible, and hopefully the stronger AIs succeed out of, you know, the stronger AIs make it on and the weaker AIs kind of, you know, don't, is essentially kind of the goal. So, but This episode we're actually going to call episode 0 because we're not going to actually get into the first round in this one. I'll have group stage 1, the first episode, going out live here in, sometime today, probably a couple hours later from this episode. But this episode, I just kind of wanted to talk about all the different groups and kind of like break them down and kind of talk about which ones are really scary, which ones look really good. And then the other thing I want to talk about before I actually get into it is I was actually thinking about this. So I've been watching a lot of Queen's Gambit recently on Netflix, which is a really interesting series, but I'm not going to talk too much about it other than the whole thing is about chess. And one of the things with chess is all of every player, professional player, has what's called, I think it's an ELO ranking. And then in addition to that, I was also thinking about like FIFA. Once again, there's FIFA world rankings for all of the different teams. And I was like, what would be really, really interesting here with this in the future? Instead of doing an AI only championship series where it has all of the civs in the game, what happens if instead what we end up doing is we do kind of similar to what the Euros are doing now instead of friendly? What if we gave all of the different civs in the game a ranking? And essentially what I would do is I would take essentially their placement based on how they do in this championship series and all of the past championship series. And what I would do is essentially give them points, and then based on their points, I would end up ranking all of the civs. And then once we have all the civs ranked, like, hey, this civ has like 500 points, this one has like 20 points. What we would do is then break them down into different groups. Kind of like, once again, what they're doing with Europe with basically the qualifying. And so we would have like group A, which has like the best of the best civs, then group B, which kind of has the second tier civs, group C, which has the third tier civs, and so on and so forth. And essentially what we would do is we would then have like a championship league where during the entire course of the year, we would have different group stages kind of basically compete with each other. And we would have relegation and we would have promotion between the different leagues so that the different civs can move up and down in the leagues. And essentially then at that point, then maybe only the top 2 leagues would then make it to the next championship series, kind of like how the World Cup doesn't have all the civs in the game, or doesn't have all the civs in the world, or all the civs, doesn't have all the countries in the world. It would be kind of the similar thing where the championship series then wouldn't have everyone, which I think in some ways would make a lot more sense, because then we wouldn't have to waste time on having some crap civs like the Maori, who are a really good civ, but the AI just doesn't know how to play them. So because of that, hopefully then we would have better AI going into the championship round. That would be kind of the idea, into the championship series, number 1. So we would have better competition. And then number 2, it would be a lot quicker as well. So it wouldn't be like this 3, 4, 5, 6 month thing. Now, the biggest issue I can see with that is the fact that, well, some civs, like for example, Babylon, this is going to be their first AI only championship series. So if they came out first, obviously, like they would still have less points if we were basing it purely on a point system. So part of me is thinking we should maybe instead base it on an average system where it's like, hey, this is like the average placement you got over the course of all of these different group stages. Now, or all the different championship series. The biggest issue I can see is I'm going to have to literally go back though and look at the placements for every single group stage and every single AI only championship series we've ever done, which seems like that might be a lot of work. It kind of intrigues me. Like, I love this kind of stuff. Like, this is very nerdy math kind of stuff, which for whatever reason, I always love statistics and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, I really kind of want to do that, but it's also going to take a lot of time. So I don't know. These are just kind of ideas. And this is one of the things I love about the AI only championship series is things aren't necessarily always set in stone. I very much kind of look to you guys to help shape it. Like this AI only championship series, like when we first started off, there was no second chance round, but then someone suggested it in the comments at first, and I was like, that's actually a great idea. And then like the knockout rounds being like 3 rounds instead of just 1 round. I think the first time we did it, it was just 1 round, and then people were like, hey, you should do multiple rounds so it's a little more fair. And it's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so because of the AI only championship series has just kind of evolved throughout time, just with people's suggestions and stuff like that. So essentially, this is kind of my vision for the future. I love the idea of just doing an AI only championship league through the course of the year, but definitely need some suggestions on that and what you guys think. Now, as for this series here, it's going to be just like we did normal. The rules are going to be essentially the exact same as they've been before. When we get to the 24, we're going to be doing the reverse knockout rounds, where essentially instead of having, well, I think at that point we break into 2 groups of 12, and then I think at the end of like 200 turns, we do like a fast fire group stage. We end up eliminating the bottom 2 2 or something like that. And then we get down to the final 20, break it to 2 groups of 10 until we get to like 16 and stuff like that. And essentially we kind of do a reverse knockout round. So it's less about winning your group at that point and more about just not getting the worst start and absolutely sucking. So that's kind of how that's going to go. Let's pop back over here. And then the mod we're using is the same mod we had been using. I have the better balanced starts on. Hopefully it helps. Actually, that's just for multiplayer. It does say single player though. Hopefully it works for single player. Hopefully it makes a difference. We have no idea. But then we're using the better spectator mod to essentially let the game just kind of tick. The biggest downside with this is I can't pause the game whenever. I essentially have to wait for the World Congress to pop up before we can actually, or an emergency to pop up before I can actually pause the game, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. Also, this is a bit on the laggy side. It's a bit framey. I think when I was doing my test thing just to make sure the mod was actually working with the newest patch, it worked fine, but we were getting like 20-25 frames per second, it looks like. So it's kind of annoying from that standpoint, but I just don't know of what we can do other than, hey, Brian, update your computer, which, you know, hopefully maybe for the next championship series, I'll have a new computer, but who knows? I mean, it's not like my computer's bad. My computer is very much middle of the road right now, which is great, but also, you know, I would love a better processor, so maybe that would be helpful. I mean, we have 32 gigs of RAM, so one of the bigger things was like, hey, this affects your RAM performance, and I'm like, yeah, it's not my RAM. I mean, the mod itself might just be laggy. It might actually not have anything to do with my computer. I might have the best computer on the planet and it might still lag. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going around in the background, so who knows, who knows? So that's essentially what's happening. If you guys have suggestions for different mods, I don't mind switching mods during the middle of the game. It's just obviously each round needs to have the same mod, you know, but switching mods in between rounds doesn't really matter because, you know, whoever's competing's competing with the same mod, and that's all that really matters. So let's go ahead and talk about each of the group stages while I grab a quick drink of water because lots of talking right now. Okay, and here's the biggest thing. If you thought I talked fast in normal series, the AI only championship series is where Brian talks really fast because there's a lot that happens and I got to talk about it all. So we essentially put these fancy thumbnails together for all 6 of our groups, which is like, yay. Now, hopefully I remember everyone's picture and I remember their names, so that's going to be fun. But anyways, group 1, we got Gandhi with India, we got Norway with Harold, we got Teddy with America, we got Pericles with Greece, we got Poland with Jadwiga. Yes, we got Elnor with, I think this was is this the English one? That is the English Eleanor. We got, oh, you know, I could just look at my notes here. We got Suleiman with the Ottomans, and we got Pachacuti with Inca, and we got Tamar with Georgia. Now, I feel like this group is probably going to be a little bit on the weaker side. Oh, you guys actually can't see my mouse when I do that. Well, that's awkward. But I was mousing over the different civs. But I kind of feel like, let's not do it there. Let's do it here. I think this will be a little bit easier. This group, I feel, is kind of a little bit on the weaker side. Both Tamar, Georgia, and Poland, Jadwiga, are a little bit on the weaker side. Pericles can be a little weaker. He can also be extraordinarily powerful. I've had a game with Pericles go out on like turn 215, which I think is the earliest I've ever seen the AI go out, just because he got absolutely psychotic culture gain at that point. Now, Teddy is one of the better civs in the game. Harold's kind of hit or miss. He tends to build way too many long ships, so it's really going to depend on whether or not there's a lot of water. I think, just do shuffle on the map, so it's kind of like hit or miss whether or not he gets a good start. Now, India is one of the ex-winners, and technically Teddy Roosevelt Bull, I think, is the original one. Well, they kind of split up his agenda, so it's like half the original one. So you could argue that there are 2 winners in this one. Pachacuti's not bad, and Suleiman's not bad. So, I mean, there's going to be some competition in this, but there's definitely a large portion of the weaker civs in this one as well. Now, keep in mind the time Gandhi won, that was still a bit surprising. Most of the time we see Gandhi specifically. Chandragrupa tends to be okay. Gandhi tends to be pretty bad. Elephants are absolutely great, but after the elephants kind of start getting a little dated, Gandhi starts to kind of fall behind a little bit. So I would not be surprised if Gandhi is not one of the leaders out of this. I said that completely the weirdest way possible, but I kind of imagine Gandhi not really doing particularly well. So if I had to pick, I would obviously say probably Teddy, and I think I would go with Ottomans right now. I think everyone else besides that are a little on the weaker side. So then if we pop over here to group 2, I just want to show off my good pictures, man. I spent a lot of time yesterday on these, so, you know, deal with it. So, you know, there with group 2 pictures, we got Gorgo with the Greece, we got Nubia and Minotaur. I'm going to butcher some of these names because I never say them. We get Philip the Seconds with Spain. We get the Maori and Coupe. We get Saladin in Arabia. We get the Congo. We get the Japan, and we get Australia, and we get Babylon. Shut up. I totally said those names. Anyways, this group looks a little bit better. As I was putting it in there, I was like, oh my god, because Japan and Australia are 2 of the better civs in the game. Now, Saladin tends to be one of the better civs as well. Simply because if you've never seen a championship series before, religion tends to be one of the big X factors in the game, because only X number of civs can actually get a religion, and religion can give you up to an extra 100, I think maybe 200 points. I'm trying to remember. I think it's like 100 extra points when it comes to score victory. And those 100 points can make a huge difference. So if, for example, Congo and Arabia were pretty much equal, all things considered, but Saladin had the religion, that extra 100 points from the religion is going to give him the lead, which is part of the reason Congo is probably never going to be able to make it extraordinarily far. We also have Coupe, who, if this was an Earth map, like, what is it, the Terra map, he'd be doing really well, but chances are he's probably going to end up being kind of weak. So this is one of those interesting situations where we have a couple of the bigger ones. Again, it's a lot like Group 1, where we have a couple really heavy civs, but then a lot of the weaker ones. If I had to pick 2 civs out of this, it's going to be obviously Australia and Japan. Australia, I'm not saying the civ in it themselves are that strong. It's more that the AI tends to be aggressive. And one of the things we've seen now doing this 4 different times, plus all the other AI only stuff we've done, is any of the AI civs that tend to be a little more aggressive, a little more warlike, tend to do well. Generally, what ends up happening is if they tend to be very warlike, they're going to end up being able to conquer their neighbors early on. Now, it can be like very 50-50. If they end up failing in their first war, then that might set them back. But a lot of times, and especially when you're talking about like a Japan or Australia, they tend, I would say majority of the time, to come out on top. Now, what's going to be really interesting is Babylon here. I feel like Babylon's going to be absolutely terrible because, well, 2 things. Number 1, I don't know. Can the AI actually get civic boosts or science boosts? I always thought the AI couldn't get boosts, but quite frankly, that might just be a false thing that I had in my head for a while, and I've just never really actually knew the real rules with it. I always thought they couldn't, but even if they could, the AI is not really going to be able to utilize the boost like a player would be able to do. So I feel like they're going to be super, super terrible as an AI player, but I'm intrigued to see how it actually shakes out, because getting that negative 50% science, especially if they go for science victors, is going to be very, 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 very bad for them. So then when it comes over here to group 3, we have Dido, with Phoenicia, we have Catherine. This is the black version of her. What is it? The black, I didn't write down the whole name. Whatever, it's the original Catherine. With France, we got Pedro with Brazil. We get Simone Bolivar with Gran Colombia, which is going to be interesting to see. We got Matthias with Hungary. We got Wilhelmina with Dutch. We got Korea. We got Gilgi with Sumeria. And we got Tamaris with Scythia. Now, when I was originally putting this group together, I was like, holy crap, this is the group of groups. Because you got Scythia, you got Sumeria. Gilgamesh with his early war cards are just ridiculously powerful in early game aggression. Although it can be easily avoided by just friending him up. The AI doesn't really tend to do that. So if Gilgi gets any sort of early aggression, it's like over, because those war cards are just going to absolutely dominate. Scythia with the horses is going to be rather interesting as well. Wilhelmina has been one of the better civs in the game. Simone Bolivar is one of the more powerful civs in the game. Brazil and Pedro are one of the ex-winners of the game, like they were the first winner. And Catherine has not been particularly bad. Catherine's one of those civs, I think, that has made it maybe to every knockout round. And I think she's made it to the finals a couple times. The AI has been fairly okay with her. So this is going to be a pretty heavy group. Now, you might say, hey, you've not mentioned Korea, who personally I rank as like the best civ in the game. Yeah, here's the thing. Even though I feel like Korea's maybe the most overpowered civ in the game, the AI can be so hit or miss with them. Now, once again, Korea, very much like Pericles I mentioned earlier, there has been times where I've seen Korea go absolutely crazy, but there has been more times than not I've seen Korea just get absolutely destroyed by a neighbor. So, and especially with the aggressive neighbors she has potentially in this game, I would not be surprised if Korea doesn't make it out. But this is definitely going to be an extraordinarily strong group, and maybe the most, I would say the second most exciting group, because, you know, let's talk about, no, group 5 is the really powerful one. All right, well, let's talk about group 4 then instead. Group 4, we got Shaka with Zulu. We got Eleanor of Aquitaine. This is the French version of her. We got Russia Peter. We got Frederick Barbarossa with Germany. We got Cleopatra Egypt. We got Yavelman Khmer. We got Trajan with the Roman Empire. We got Menelik with Ethiopian, and we got Wilford as Canada. So, well, right away, we got two of the weaker civs. We got Canada, which might be one of the weakest civs here in the game. And then we also have Yaverman, who is also probably equally as bad. This group is probably very similar to Group 3, where it's got actually quite a few of the large powerhouses. Germany tends to be very aggressive, so they tend to be very good. Peter is one of the more ridiculously overpowered ones, and unlike Korea, he is actually, his agendas and his stuff actually is very beneficial. So because he just gets all that extra territory when he settles cities, and because he gets all those extra great people, and because he almost always gets a religion, he tends to be maybe the most overpowered AI civ. Like, it has been legitly surprising that he has not won one of the AI only series up to this point, because the AI playing Russia Peter is just, it's super overpowered. Like, he could literally win every single time. Like, there has been talk of me not actually having him in these games in the future if he wins, just because he is so ridiculously overpowered. But you know what? That's why you play the games, because every once in a while he gets absolutely bit in the butt by RNG, and that's why he doesn't win. He should have technically won the very first AI only series, but that's a long story and we're not going to get into it. But anyways, Trajan tends to be kind of mediocre. Cleopatra's got early aggressive units, and so she tends to be okay. Zulu tends to be really good if he gets like that good mid-level aggression based on early cores. And then Menelik, I think, is going to be one of the better civs as well, but we'll see. I would have to say I'd probably rank this civ slightly worse than Group 3, or this group slightly worse than Group 3, but not too far behind. If I had to pick two out of here, I would pick Peter, and I would, you know what, I'm actually going to go with, you know what, I'm going to go with Eleanor French. I'm gonna go with French Eleanor, because Eleanor had some really good games last time. And if we're talking dramatic age mode, if she can get the proper dramatic ages, which by the way, we are gonna play with all the different game modes on, I think she could have a really good chance. Now, I didn't talk about Group 3, who I think is gonna walk out of Group 3. I'm actually gonna pick Tomarus over Gilgi, even though I really think Gilgi's got a good chance. I'm actually gonna go probably Simone as my other one. I think those are the two I'm going to pick out of those. Okay, Group 5, which is going to go down as the powerhouse group, in my opinion. We got Gitaja, who can be very good. I always root for Gitaja because she's probably one of my favorite civs in the game. I think she's got a really good chance. She did really, really well in the last AI only series. She can be hit or miss, but I think she's got a really good chance. China tends to be really, really good as well, with Xin Shi, right? I think is how you say that one. Then Chandragupta, one of the better AI only civs as well. Teddy, obviously going to be powerful. Genghis Khan, oh my god. Then we got Gauls here, which I've not actually seen them play, but I'm imagining they're going to be pretty aggressive. Christina with Sweden. We got the original France, and we got Mali. So, number one right away. Let's pop in the right one. Molly's gonna absolutely die. So if there's one thing we can say about this one, is Molly's gonna absolutely die. I don't know, the Molly AI has never been scary to me ever since it came out. I know they make ridiculous amounts of money, but I've never seen them actually play particularly well. Now, I don't really remember how well they did in our last AI only series. Maybe they did better than, you know, I actually give them credit for in a single player game, but I don't see them particularly surviving. I actually think Gitarja, as much as I love her, I don't think she's going to be able to survive. China, if China can get the early wonders doesn't avoid early aggression until he gets his crouching tigers, he will be okay. But like, let's be honest, Chandragupta with the aggressive AI, with essentially hating every one of his neighbors, with the heavy elephants early game is just going to be really, really scary. Teddy Roosevelt with Rough Rider. I actually don't know how the different Teddys actually play. I've not done an AI only with these different Teddys, so I'm going to be intrigued to see if they play any different, but Teddy is always one of the more aggressive AIs, which is why he scares me. Then you have Genghis Khan, who is the aggressive of aggression. Like, essentially, the only Civ that might be more aggressive would be maybe Tomarus. I don't know. I mean, Chandragupta tends to be really aggressive, but he tends to win more often than not, and he tends to pop out Cav. Now, every once in a while, what usually ends up happening and what ends up screwing Mongolia, and one of the reasons Mongolia doesn't win every single time, is they tend to end up having one single round where they just end up losing one of the battles, and then they're just never able to come back from it. But we'll see. Then Gaul with the extra aggression, and then the extra basically encampment buildings they got now with their industrial zones. I'm gonna be really intrigued to see how they work. Christina, I think, is gonna have some trouble here unless, you know, everyone spawns a little far apart and she doesn't get too much aggression. Catherine, same thing with what I was talking about Eleanor with France here. She tends to do pretty good, and a lot of it is because her unique unit, oh god, I forgot the name. But her unique unit is one of the better ones if she can survive to that long. Now, there's been more often than not, she just ends up getting destroyed long before she gets her unique unit. But her unique unit, having the extra combat strength on her home continent, is just really, really, really powerful. It's also really powerful for the time it comes out too. So it'll be interesting to see how well she does. And then, like I said, I think Molly's gonna die. So then after we get that most of the amazing groups, then we're gonna end up popping down to group 6, which, you know, is fine. We got English Victoria, we got Montezuma with the Aztecs, we got Lataro with Mapuche, we got Lady Six Guy with the Mayan, we got Poundmaker Cree, we got Alexander Macedonia, we got Basil with Byzantium, we got Cyrus Persian, and we got Robert the Brutish, Robert the Bruce with the Scottish, Robert the Brutish. But anyways, I think this one's a kind of an intriguing group. So normally I would rate Lataro and Poundmaker as more of the weaker civs in the game, but the AI tends to be very aggressive with them, and they tend to do better. They tend to punch a little bit above their weight class. I'm also kind of intrigued to see how Lady Six Guy does. And then Alexander should be fairly good. And I think Basil is going to be do pretty good as well. Now, Persia and Cyrus is one of those AIs that is not as good as they should be, where the player is going to be much better just because the AI doesn't properly utilize their unique unit. Like, I think Persia is one of the better civs in the game, but I don't think the AI is going to do particularly well with them. They tend to be like 50-50 on it. And then Scotland, you know, I know a lot of people love Scotland. They probably are like 30-70, where 30% of the time they do well. So there's a lot of intrigue in this group, because I really think pretty much anyone could come out of this group. Like, we've even seen Victoria come out of the group. Now, Aztecs are one of the more powerful civs, probably top 5 civ easily in the game. Now, is that gonna translate here with the AI only series? I don't know, but I could literally see probably any one of these civs coming out of this group, and that's probably the only group that doesn't have a single civ where I'm like, they're a little on the weaker side. So yeah, that is all the different group stages. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I don't think so. So like I said, top 12 of each group, or top 2 of each group are gonna pop out, which is gonna leave us with 12. Then we're gonna have 42 left, which will be 7 groups of 6. Then the top 2 of those remaining knockout second chance groups are gonna make it through, 12 of them. And then we'll have 24 for the knockout rounds. So we're gonna end up doing it. The next 5 or so episodes are gonna be group 1, and then we'll have the next 5 or so episodes here with group 2, and then so on and so forth from there. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this preliminary episode here. We will be back later today here with the first round, and we will see what happens there. So if you enjoyed it, drop a like, comment, let me know what you think. As always, hit the subscribe button, join the GameCommon, show your support. This is going to be a longer series, so all the support you guys give it, the better off it is for the channel. So I appreciate it, and thank you guys as always. Oh yeah, and if you have suggestions, definitely throw me the suggestions. I may implement them now, I may implement them in the future, but I definitely, even if I'm not responding to comments. I am reading all your comments, just FYI. So I've been a little bad at responding recently, but I have been reading all the comments. Just want to throw that out there. So definitely please throw me all the comments out. So, and then always you can hop into our Discord too as well, which is linked in the description below. There should be a link to the Discord there. And you can talk in general. I'm usually checking general every day. So, you know, any suggestions or whatever, we can talk there, or you can talk, you know, craziness about America like I always do. But whatever, that's a whole nother story. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, everybody.